The void between stars held secrets, but Captain Sarah Chen never expected to stumble upon one quite like this. The UES Vanguard hung in space at the edge of an asteroid field, its sensors painting a grim picture of destruction. Debris clouded the ship's holographic displays, the remnants of what had once been a thriving colony. Multiple impact signatures consistent with antimatter weapons. Captain, Lieutenant Rivera reported from the tactical station, her voice tight. Based on radiation decay, the attack happened less than 12 hours ago. Sarah stood from her command chair, her eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. The Vanguard was humanity's newest deep space explorer, built to establish first contact with alien civilizations. Instead, they'd found a graveyard. Life signs? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. Yes, ma'am. Scattered throughout the debris field. Approximately 3,000 survivors in stasis pods, but their power supplies are failing. Without intervention, they have less than 6 hours. The bridge fell silent. First contact protocols were explicit. Observe and report, nothing more. Humanity wasn't ready to interfere in interstellar politics, but Sarah hadn't joined the Explorer Corps to document atrocities. Dr. Harrison, she called to her xenobiologist. Analysis of the survivors. A hologram sprang to life, showing alien physiology. The beings were humanoid, with iridescent skin and 4 arms. Remarkable similarity to human baseline, Harrison replied. They could survive in our atmosphere. More importantly, they're civilians. The pod designs showed no weapons capability. Before Sarah could respond, tactical alerts blared across the bridge. Multiple contacts. Rivera shouted. 3 vessels just emerged from FTL. Configuration matches the weapon signatures from the attack. The alien ships were beautiful in their terror. Sleek obsidian forms that seemed to drink in light itself. Each was easily twice the size of the Vanguard. Bristling with weapons, Sarah's tactical systems couldn't even categorize. They're targeting the survival pods, Rivera reported, horror in her voice. Energy signatures building. Sarah's mind raced. The Vanguard was an explorer, not a warship, though like all human vessels it carried significant defensive capabilities. The politicians back home had insisted on it, paranoid about first contact scenarios, now that paranoia might save lives. All hands, battle stations, Sarah commanded, her voice carrying across the ship-wide comm. Deploy point defense grid. Begin emergency pod recovery operations. Her crew responded instantly, though she could feel their tension. Humanity had never fought an interstellar war. They were about to start one. Captain, her XO, Commander David Walsh, stepped closer. First contact protocols are superseded by the prevention of genocide treaties, Sarah finished. We're not here to document history, Commander. We're here to make it. The alien vessels accelerated toward them, their very movements seeming to distort space. The Vanguard's engines thrummed as Sarah ordered them into a defensive position between the attackers and the survival pods. Open a channel, all frequencies, Sarah ordered. They should know exactly who they're dealing with. The comm officer nodded, and Sarah straightened in her chair. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Vanguard. You are engaged in the attempted genocide of a civilian population. Stand down immediately. The response came in the form of energy weapons fire, bizarre weapons that seemed to age the very space they passed through. But humanity hadn't spent the last century preparing for space combat without learning a few tricks. Return fire, Sarah ordered. Show them why humans believe in redundancy. The Vanguard's point defense grid came alive. Not one powerful weapon, but thousands of smaller ones. Layers of countermeasures and defensive systems that made human ships look ungainly compared to alien designs. Where the attackers had elegant, powerful weapons, the Vanguard had what one engineer had called a shotgun approach to space combat. The first alien shots splashed against their shields, aging them decades in seconds. But human shields weren't single barriers. They were overlapping fields of different technologies. As one layer aged and died, another took its place. Shields holding at 82%, Rivera reported, surprise in her voice. Their weapons are powerful, but they're not adapted to our defensive doctrine. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Launch recovery drones for the survival pods, and target their primary weapon systems. Let's see how they handle human ingenuity. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The alien ships were more advanced in almost every way, but they'd never encountered humanity's unique approach to technology. Where they had single, devastating weapons, the Vanguard had thousands of smaller ones. Where they had powerful shields, the Vanguard had layers of different defenses. And most importantly, where they expected a simple explorer vessel to flee, they found humanity's core truth. When faced with injustice, humans fight back. First wave of survival pods secured, Rivera reported as the Vanguard's point defense grid drove back another attack run. Medical teams standing by. But Captain, we're picking up more FTL signatures. A lot more. Sarah nodded, watching as space itself seemed to tear open, disgorging more of the obsidian ships. Send a quantum burst transmission to Earth. Tell them humanity just made first contact, and we're going to need more ships. The Vanguard's engines flared as it moved to protect more of the survival pods, its weapons blazing in defiance of the darkness. Humanity had come to the stars seeking knowledge and friendship. Instead, they'd found a war. But if these attackers thought humanity would stand idle while innocents died, they were about to learn a harsh lesson about Earth's children. The battle for humanity's soul had begun. The UES Vanguard's medical bay had never been designed to handle 3,000 refugees. Yet somehow, Dr. Harrison and her team had managed to convert cargo holds into makeshift treatment centers, their efficiency a testament to human adaptability. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the entrance, watching as medical staff tended to their iridescent-skinned patients. They call themselves the Lissari, Dr. Harrison reported, falling into step beside Sarah. Their translators are surprisingly compatible with our linguistics database. They're a peaceful species, scientists and artists mostly. The attackers, though, she paused, her expression darkening. They're known as the Dominion. They've been systematically destroying what they call lesser species for centuries. Sarah's jaw tightened. The Vanguard had been fighting a running battle for the past 6 hours, using the asteroid field to their advantage, while evacuating as many survivors as possible. The Dominion's superior technology was offset by their apparent confusion at human tactics. They simply couldn't understand why an inferior species would risk themselves for strangers. Captain to the bridge. Commander Walsh's voice came through her comm. Long-range sensors have detected something you need to see. When Sarah reached the bridge, the tactical display told a grim story. Dominion reinforcements? She asked. No, Mom. Rivera's fingers danced across her console, enhancing the image. It's a Lissari archive ship. They managed to escape the initial attack, but their engines are failing. The Dominion fleet is pursuing them. Sarah studied the data. The archive ship was massive, easily 4 times the size of the Vanguard. According to the Lissari refugees, it contained their species' entire cultural and scientific history, along with thousands more survivors in stasis. The Dominion will reach them before they can make another FTL jump, Walsh noted. We're already overtaxed with our current refugees, Captain. We can't take on more. No, Sarah agreed, but we can't let their history and people be erased either. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Rivera, what's the status of our experimental weapons? Rivera blinked in surprise. The graviton pulse is charged, but it's never been tested in combat conditions. Engineering says the power requirements could leave us vulnerable. Sarah smiled. The graviton pulse was a perfect example of human ingenuity, a weapon that turned an enemy's mass against itself, using their own size and power to disrupt their systems. It was messy, inelegant, and exactly the kind of thing the Dominion wouldn't expect. Plot an intercept course, she ordered. and get me a channel to the archive ship. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as the Vanguard prepared for battle. Sarah had authorized the release of their classified combat protocols to the Lissari engineers they'd rescued, and in return, they'd provided insights into Dominion technology. Channel open to archive ship, communications reported. This is Captain Chen of the UES Vanguard. Sarah broadcast. Hold your position. We're coming to assist. The response came in slightly accented English, the Lissari translators adapting quickly. Human vessel. This is Archive Master Vereen. We carry the last remnants of our civilization. We cannot ask you to sacrifice. You're not asking, Sarah interrupted. We're offering. Humanity stands with the Lissari people. The Vanguard's engines roared to full power, its course taking it directly toward the pursuing Dominion fleet. Sarah had spent the last 6 hours studying their tactics, and one thing had become clear. The Dominion was powerful, but inflexible. They had no concept of sacrifice plays or misdirection. All hands, battle stations, Sarah commanded. Engineering, divert all non-essential power to the graviton pulse. Medical, secure all patients. This is going to get rough. The Dominion ships moved to intercept them, their weapons charging. But Sarah had something they didn't expect. Human unpredictability, and 6 hours of combat data. Execute attack pattern Sierra 3, she ordered. The Vanguard suddenly cut its main engines, using its maneuvering thrusters to spin in a way that would have torn apart a less robustly built ship. The Dominion vessels, expecting a head-on assault, found themselves firing at empty space as the human ship seemed to dance between their shots. Graviton pulse at full charge, Rivera reported. But Captain, at this range, we'll be caught in the effect too. That's counting on it, Sarah replied. Execute. The graviton pulse fired, not at the Dominion ships, but at a precise point between them. Space itself seemed to twist as the weapon created a localized gravity well, turning the Dominion's own mass against them. Their elegant ships, built for power rather than structural integrity, began to buckle. The Vanguard wasn't immune to the effect, but human engineers had built their ships differently. Where the Dominion created beautiful, efficient designs, humanity had built their vessels like spacefaring tanks, with redundant systems and reinforced structures that could take punishment from any angle. Hull stress at 89% of maximum, engineering reported as the ship groaned around them. We can hold together, Captain. The same couldn't be said for the Dominion vessels. Their sleek hulls, unable to handle the gravitational stresses, began to tear apart. Those that survived found their weapons and propulsion systems misaligned by the spatial distortion. Archive ship reports FTL systems back online. Communications announced. They're ready to jump. Sarah nodded, watching as the Dominion fleet struggled to regroup. Send them the coordinates for the rendezvous point. And prepare another surprise for our friends. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate humanity. As the archive ship jumped to safety, the Vanguard launched its next attack. Humanity had come to the stars in peace, but they had never come unprepared. The Dominion was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Word travels fast in an interconnected galaxy. Within days of the Vanguard's stand against the Dominion, quantum communications channels across dozens of systems buzzed with the news. A previously unknown species had done the impossible. They'd fought the Dominion and survived. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Vanguard's newly constructed diplomatic chamber, a converted cargo bay now hosting representatives from 7 different species. The Lissari archive master Vereen stood beside her, their iridescent skin shifting with shades of gratitude and hope. The Dominion has ruled through fear for 3 centuries, a crystalline being called Annexuri explained, its crystalline form refracting light as it spoke. No single species has dared to stand against them. Until now. We didn't stand against them for glory, Sarah responded, her voice firm. We stood against them because it was right. Humanity doesn't believe in standing idle while innocents suffer. A reptilian diplomat from the Carey Confederation leaned forward. Yet in doing so, you've changed everything. The Dominion's aura of invincibility is shattered. Their latest attacks on our outer colonies have been hesitant. Sarah exchanged glances with Commander Walsh. The Vanguard had spent the last week making emergency repairs while protecting the Lissari refugees. Earth had dispatched a relief fleet, but it would take months to arrive. Until then, they were on their own, yet somehow they'd become a symbol of resistance. The Dominion's strength lies in their technological superiority. Vereen added, their translator conveying the complexity of their tonal language. But humans, you approach problems differently. Your ships, your tactics, they're completely unexpected. Before Sarah could respond, Lieutenant Rivera's voice came through the comm. Captain to the bridge. Priority 1. Excuse me, Sarah nodded to the delegates. As she strode onto the bridge, the tactical display told the story. A massive Dominion fleet had emerged from FTL at the edge of the system. 53 ships, Rivera reported, including 3 of their Worldbreaker-class vessels. They're not here for a skirmish this time, Captain. Sarah studied the display. The Dominion had finally realized that humanity wouldn't back down, so they'd sent enough firepower to ensure there would be no survivors. But they still didn't understand what they were dealing with. Get me a channel to the diplomatic chamber, she ordered. When the line opened, she addressed the gathered representatives. Distinguished delegates, it appears the Dominion has decided to join our discussion. They'd brought 53 ships to make their point. A moment of silence followed, broken by the Nexari diplomat. Then we should depart. The Vanguard is mighty, but against such numbers. Actually, Sarah interrupted, I have a proposal. You've all come here seeking to understand humanity. Let us show you why the Dominion fears us so much. Not because of our technology or our weapons, but because of something far more powerful, our ability to work together. She outlined her plan quickly. Each species' ships had different strengths, different technologies. Alone, none could stand against the Dominion. But together, coordinated by human tactical doctrine. It's insane. The Carey representative hissed. A dozen ships from different species, never trained together, against a Dominion battle fleet. Precisely why it will work, Sarah replied. The Dominion expects us to flee. They expect fear. Instead, we'll show them something they've never seen, unity. One by one, the representatives agreed. Within hours, ships from 7 species had taken formation around the Vanguard. None were dedicated warships. They were traders, explorers, and refugees. But they all carried defensive capabilities, and more importantly, they all carried crews who had watched humanity stand up to tyranny. Battle group forming up, Rivera reported, a note of awe in her voice as ships of wildly different designs moved into position. The Dominion fleet is launching their first wave. Sarah stood at her command station, watching as the tactical display updated. The Dominion ships moved with perfect precision, their formation flawless. But perfection could be a weakness, especially against an enemy that rewrote the rules. Send to all ships, she commanded. This is Captain Chen. Today, we fight not just for humanity, not just for the Lissari, but for every species that has lived under the shadow of fear. The Dominion believes their technology makes them unstoppable. Let's show them why they're wrong. The Vanguard's engines flared as it took the lead position. Behind it, ships of 7 different species moved in formations that would have given any tactical officer a headache. But Sarah had learned something important about the galaxy. Sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't technology, but the ability to inspire others to stand together. All ships, execute Battle Plan Unity 1, she ordered. Show them what happens when the galaxy stands as one. As the first Dominion shots lanced out across space, the most unlikely battle group in galactic history began its attack. The Dominion had come expecting to crush a single human vessel. Instead, they faced something they had never imagined possible. A galaxy united against them. The battle for the future of galactic civilization had begun. The Dominion had never lost a major fleet engagement in their 3 centuries of expansion. The battle that became known as the Unity Defense changed that. While the Allied fleet suffered heavy damage, they achieved what many had thought impossible. They forced a Dominion battle group to retreat. But Captain Sarah Chen knew that a single victory wasn't enough. As she stood in the Vanguard's war room 2 weeks later, surrounded by holographic tactical displays, she explained her plan to representatives of the Allied species. The Dominion expects us to fortify, to dig in and wait for them to return with an even larger fleet, she began. So we're going to do exactly what they don't expect. We're going to take the fight to them. Archive Master Varine's skin rippled with concern. Captain, even with our combined forces, we can't match their numbers or technology. We don't need to, Sarah replied, manipulating the holographic display to show a network of Dominion supply lines. Thanks to intelligence from all of your species, we've mapped their logistics network. The Dominion's powerful, yes, but they're also rigid, predictable. The Nexari representative's crystalline form pulsed with understanding. You intend to attack their supply lines. Better. Sarah zoomed in on specific points in the network. We're going to teach everyone in this sector of space how to fight back. The Dominion thinks in terms of large fleets and overwhelming force. They've never faced an insurgency. Over the next several hours, Sarah outlined Operation Wildfire. The Allied species would split into small, mobile task forces, each led by human tactical officers. Their mission wouldn't be to win huge battles, but to strike at vulnerable points and vanish before the Dominion could respond. They called us primitives, Sarah continued, but humanity learned long ago that superior technology doesn't guarantee victory. Sometimes, the greatest weapon is the ability to adapt, to think differently. The plan was approved, and within days, the resistance began. The Vanguard led the first strike, hitting a Dominion fuel processing facility. They didn't destroy it. Instead, they followed human-designed protocols to disable its defenses and release all the facility's data to nearby systems. The message was clear. The Dominion wasn't invincible. Other strikes followed. A Nexari human task force disabled a communications relay. Carry ships, using human ECM techniques, raided a drone production facility. The Lissari, their scientific knowledge combined with human tactical innovations, found ways to disrupt Dominion FTL corridors. Each victory was broadcast across quantum channels. Each successful raid inspired more species to join the resistance. The Dominion responded with increasing force, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. For the first time in centuries, they faced an enemy they couldn't simply overwhelm with superior firepower. Status report, Sarah commanded, 1 month into Operation Wildfire. The War Room's tactical display showed dozens of engagement points across the sector. Dominion fleet movements are becoming erratic, Rivera reported. They're deploying larger forces to protect their supply lines, which is leaving their frontier worlds vulnerable. The Carry Confederation has successfully liberated 3 of their colonies in the past week. Commander Walsh added, more importantly, their aura of invincibility is gone. We're getting reports of uprisings in occupied systems across the sector. The Dominion's trying to maintain control, but they've never had to fight enemies they can't see coming. Sarah studied the display, noting how the Dominion's once perfect formations had become scattered, reactive. They were still individually powerful, but they were losing the initiative. More importantly, they were losing the fear they'd used to control the galaxy. New contact, Rivera announced suddenly. Quantum transmission from Captain, it's from Earth. The relief fleet has arrived at the sector border. 6 carrier groups, plus support vessels. A smile crossed Sarah's face. Send to all Allied forces. Operation Wildfire Phase 2 is now in effect. The Dominion thought they could break us by forcing a direct confrontation. Instead, we've taught the galaxy how to break them. The tactical display updated, showing Dominion forces frantically repositioning to deal with threats from all directions. They had superior technology, but they were facing an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. Humanity had brought something new to the galaxy, Not just weapons or tactics, but hope. The Dominion still doesn't understand, Sarah said to her assembled allies. They think this is about territory or resources, but we're fighting for something they can't comprehend. The right of every species to live free from fear. And that's a force more powerful than any weapon they possess. As reports of new victories flooded in, Sarah watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Dominion had spent centuries hunting those they considered weak. Now they were about to learn what happened when the hunted learned to fight back, and humanity was teaching them how. The Dominion's high command had never known fear. For 3 centuries, they had been the undisputed masters of their sector of space, their technological superiority unchallenged. But as they assembled their greatest fleet for what they intended to be their final battle, an unfamiliar sensation crept through their neural networks. Doubt. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Vanguard, now the flagship of the largest combined fleet in galactic history. What had started with one human ship defending refugees had grown into something unprecedented. A coalition of 32 species, their ships arranged in formations that would have been impossible months ago. Dominion fleet holding position at the edge of the Nexari corridor, Lieutenant Rivera reported. 117 capital ships, including their entire Worldbreaker squadron. They're demanding our unconditional surrender. Sarah looked around her bridge, where officers from 6 different species now worked alongside her human crew. The Vanguard itself had been modified with technologies from a dozen allies, each improvement a testament to what different species could achieve together. Send to all ships, she ordered. 3 months ago, the Dominion thought they could continue their campaign of terror unopposed. They thought superior technology meant they had the right to decide which species deserved to exist. Today, we show them how wrong they were. The combined fleet moved forward, ships of wildly different designs flying in perfect harmony. Human tactical doctrine had been merged with Lissari scientific insight, Nexari crystal tech paired with Carry stealth systems. What had begun as desperate improvisation had evolved into something new, a way of warfare that celebrated diversity rather than fearing it. Enemy fleet launching first wave, Rivera announced. Their formation is different. They're adapting to our tactics. Finally, Sarah smiled. But they're still missing the point. Send to all ships. Execute Operation Phoenix. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries to come. The Dominion had indeed learned from their previous defeats, adjusting their tactics to counter the Alliance's guerrilla strategies. But in doing so, they'd fallen into humanity's greatest trap. All ships, initiate primary attack pattern, Sarah commanded. The Allied fleet suddenly split into smaller task forces, each seemingly operating independently. The Dominion fleet moved to engage, their superior numbers allowing them to pursue multiple targets. That's when the true nature of Operation Phoenix was revealed. Each Allied task force contained ships from multiple species, their different technologies working in concert. Where the Dominion expected chaos, they found coordination. Where they sought to isolate and destroy, they found unity. Dominion's center formation is breaking up, Rivera reported with satisfaction. They can't maintain cohesion while trying to counter multiple attack styles simultaneously. Sarah nodded. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting their tactics against enemies who fought like they did. But they'd never faced an enemy that could switch between dozens of different combat doctrines mid-battle, each ship amplifying the strengths of those around it. Their flagship is powering up their main weapon array, Walsh warned. Energy readings are off the scale. Exactly as predicted, Sarah replied. All ships, execute Sunburst Protocol. In perfect synchronization, vessels from 32 species activated technologies that shouldn't have worked together. Lissari quantum fields merged with human graviton pulses. Nexari crystal arrays amplified Carry energy weapons. The result was something entirely new. A demonstration of what was possible when different species worked as one. The Dominion flagship's weapon fired, a beam of pure destruction that could have shattered a planet. But it met a defense born from the combined knowledge of dozens of civilizations, each contributing their unique perspective to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Direct hit, Rivera announced, awe in her voice. The combined shield matrix is holding. Dominion weapon effectiveness reduced to 17%. Sarah stood from her command chair. Send to all ships. The Dominion wanted us to fear our differences. Instead, we learned to celebrate them. Our strength isn't in our technology or our numbers, but in our ability to work together, to learn from each other, to become more than we could ever be alone. The Allied fleet moved as one, their coordinated attack overwhelming the Dominion's defenses. One by one, the great black ships began to fall, their perfect formations shattered by an enemy they couldn't understand. Dominion flagship is signaling, communications reported. They're requesting terms of surrender. The bridge fell silent. 3 centuries of tyranny ended not by superior firepower, but by the very thing the Dominion had tried to destroy: cooperation between different species. Send to all ships, Sarah commanded, her voice carrying the weight of history. The galaxy doesn't belong to any one species. It belongs to all of us, working together, learning from each other, growing stronger through our differences rather than our similarities. As the Dominion fleet stood down, quantum communications channels across the sector erupted with celebration. The UES Vanguard, a single human explorer ship that had dared to stand against tyranny, had helped forge something unprecedented. A galaxy united not by force or fear, but by choice. Humanity's first major action on the galactic stage hadn't been conquest or submission, but something far more powerful, teaching the stars themselves that the strongest force in the universe wasn't technology or weapons, but the simple act of standing together.